And welcome everyone to the July 10th workshop. We're going to take a look. I saw Mr. Pro Taylor. Come on down. Come on down, Mr. Pro Taylor. Give us an overview of the Elkton Junior Football League. Glad to have you in town.
Thank you.
So we were,
That's it here?
yeah, absolutely. We had invited you down. We saw some emails going back and forth, and I think it's probably a good thing that we get an opportunity to meet with you and talk to you and see how things went the previous year, how it looks like it might go into next year. I know we had a couple little hiccups with bathrooms last year. I think our our issue has always been the cleanup.
Yeah.
And Dan, if there's anything you want to interject, please let me know, because I know you get the bulk of it from his end. But I know that during the flood process, we had one or two of the trailers there and we hauled them out.
Yes.
So kind of give us an overview of what you're seeing, feeling.
It's like kind of like many times that you and I have talked when we've seen each other out in the public. This is the first time I get to talk in front of the room. Some other people get to know me a little bit more. You know, you've known me for 20 years.
Yeah.
So, our community, everybody knows what our community is and how we operate and everything. But it's been a little bit harder the last couple years, because we really haven't gotten all the student athletes back out from the COVID shutdown and some different things. But, we're just a small community program, probably 90% of our students and participants are from our Elkton feeding system.
Mhm.
We have a high scholarship rate because, the way our demographic is and the way things go. We try to do the best we can as an organization to provide the opportunity for everybody to participate. We'll never tell somebody they can't participate. We'll always try to figure out what we have to do on our end to make it that everybody can. Sometimes that comes up and it creates, different hiccups on our end, because running an operation is such a financial burden. And we don't get a lot of support from the community. And majority of the stuff we do is, outreach, personal fundraising things. This year we're going a little bit heavier because we figured it's further along, people are a little bit more back in the business and willing, to donate and help out as, closer years coming out of COVID, it was hard. So we generally struggle, financially. Myself and our coaches do the best we can to chip in and provide all those extras. We might have to make some decisions in our program to not get a super fancy jersey for a year to keep our costs down.
Yeah.
So that's some of the things we do. We're not the most loved or loved group in the county. People like to take advantage of us when we finally have a down year. And we've been around long enough. When we're winning, we're disliked a lot more.
Yeah.
And last year, the whole social media thing with the porta potties, that was, knowing the person that did it was more of a direct shot at me, not you guys, not my program. It was almost weird because that was somebody who finally has a grandchild in the opposing program that, was probably something still back from you and I coached seniors together when our children were playing together. And I reached out to Mr. Dan as soon as it was going on, gave him a little bit of explanation, but it gave some people an opportunity to pile on, use it maybe as a recruiting situation, and really not knowing the whole thing. We're only a handful of so many volunteers that work full time You know, we do the best we can to get our field prepared for, game time, you know, and we really can't control what may be going on in a public use porta potty while we're participating, you know? And it's tough, and it's sad that, you know, that kind of situation came out, because I've been dealing with it ever since,
Mhm.
you know, and Mr. Dan has always been A1, great supporter. We have plenty of conversations. You know, he'll reach out sometimes with, some trash issues, and I'll let him know it was good. I'll send him the pictures from when we left, but we'll go out and clean it up, you know, because we do treat that's our home,
Mhm.
and we try to monitor that the best we can. Um, I can't control everything that goes on during the day when we just have a small window of 2.5 hours there.
When do you think you'll start, doing your registrations?
Where our registrations are open, and we're actually, gonna start some in-person registration soon.
Mhm.
Now that we just got out of, baseball finally.
Yep.
Unfortunately, but we came home yesterday.
Mhm.
And now it's, you know, a couple hours rest and we're going into football season. So I was actually, messaging my cheer director while we were back there. We're actually planning on, setting a date for some in-person registrations to help out, you know, a lot of the parents, to get them on board, to get their payment plans and everything going as soon as possible.
What can we do as a town to help?
Anything. I mean, and I don't say that, you know, in any bad way, like anything, all
Mhm.
support is appreciated. You know, we appreciate all the help, you know, times that, you've given out when we went to nationals and stuff like that. It's been greatly appreciated. Just anything, if you know some resources we can use for, you know, outside of our network for some fundraising or something like that, that would be great. Uh, this weekend being down with nationals, the fundraiser for Elkton Little League actually, was giving me some really good ideas, trying to help me out. The one that gets all the banners and everything that comes in for them.
Mhm.
He gave me some, good insight on some things to do. Stuff that we've seen before that work very well for small programs. So, I would say, you know, any kind of support be appreciated from the town. Let us know if there's some things that you guys hear, just reach out to me directly. You know, all the information that's on anything that's broadcast, so Elkton Youth Football comes directly to me.
Okay.
That's my personal phone number, you know, so if you hear something, you have any questions, anybody can call me anytime.
Well, I think, I think that, I love the program. I love to see the kids out there participating and playing. I think that we'll do our best to help you with, of course, we continue to support you with the lights.
I appreciate that.
And we'll continue to, you know, it was a little bit of a slap to us on those bathrooms, but we're gonna make sure we have bathrooms there for you, right? And we'll make sure that, we'll figure out how we can make sure that they're cleaned in a timely fashion with that, process. Dan, is there any major concerns?
No, the only thing we want is a positive experience for, for the visitors and for, Coach Pro's, local use at the same time. So especially when we host games, we just want everything positive,
Yeah.
the same thing. So it's funny, it goes back to the bathrooms. That's kind of what they remember. But, all in all, they do a good job cleaning up. In fact, it comes to line in the field. I know, Coach Pro's out there like 11 o'clock on a
Yeah.
Friday, the night before he starts out, because, we leave the lights on late. So they do have a handful of volunteers, which do a lot for the program itself. So we just want to make sure that we're on the same page as, partnerships. That's a good positive experience when people come down to the park.
Early in the season, do you need us to cut the field the
The,
day before, or do you?
that's never been really an issue. The field's always been in great shape.
Yeah.
You know, and we haven't had a lot of rain,
Mhm.
you know, so far.
It's dry now.
Yeah, so it's not getting cut and growing right back in 2 or 3 days. It's been like that pretty much the last 2 seasons. So, the field and all that is great, you know. I know Mr. Dan and those guys do a great job, and he tries to stay ahead of it. He asks for my schedule early, so he knows where we're at and everything. And he knows, like, there's been times I've reached out to him, like, Mr. Dan, I'm by myself. I get the lights on till 11 tonight, I'm still trying to paint the field.
Mhm.
And he's been fine with it. You know, I know it's been some extra burden on him, but he's always been, like I said, A1 for us
Good. Anyone from the board?
Have you in any way tried to enlist or contact parents to be a help to you?
all the time.
Because apparently I read your notes before, but I left that home, but I have it in front of me again. There's an awful lot here for you to do, and one man can't do this when you're dealing with all those little kids. Particularly with the registration, that's one of the most important things to do, because the registrations and funds actually drive your program. I think I read on the other sheet where I guess you have somebody who check on the academics of
That's
the kids
us.
while they're in school. So, you know, if you got somebody checking, then they need to also have somebody to let the kids know what their behavior has been or what the grading has been.
Mhm.
It's a lot here. But I did have one question. Kids can bring you good grades to practice, to the game, but what happens if that kid misbehaves in school during that day? You know, you have somebody that tells you that, or that's just.
Oh, yes. We stay in, constant communication with Elkton Middle School, you know, Mr. Braywood.
Okay.
Is great with us. They know, and I've actually reached out because there was a time when I first took over the program that there was a student that was suspended. And it just created a lot of confusion because they started at Twilight School. And if you're suspended, you're not allowed to participate if you're out of school. But the argument was that the student wasn't suspended out of school, he was just suspended from the day program into the Twilight program. And I brought that up before anything, and, you know, it came out that it was something different because we just started the Twilight program. So we've changed our league rules to accommodate those rules, to incorporate the Twilight as well, because people were using that as a sidebar to participate. And, you know, Mr. Braywood usually generally confirms anything that the students tell me. We hold the students accountable for everything, let them know it's your team. You know, if you hear something, we need to know, because it doesn't just punish that one person, it punishes us as a team. You know, that's a forfeit or something. That week that you worked that hard, you win that game, it's taken away from us because you guys didn't let us know that we had something wrong.
Understand.
So, you know, we've done a lot with, you know, them understanding accountability and understanding the expectations of grades. We hold it a little bit higher in our program than they do at the high school. And I've had parents come to us and ask, and, you know, as I told them, we prepare them for high school football as much as the grading prepares them for the high school education. If we're expecting a 3.0, that practice, along with the football practice, prepares them for anything to do with high school. That 2.0, 2.2, that should be light work. And for the most part, we haven't had any students fall below that. Wednesdays, we have, some National Honor Society students come out. They do some tutoring, you know, it gives them their credit hours, and we all kind of try to work everything together, help each other out. But, you know, they've been great with helping our students.
Very good.
So,
Do you have an opportunity to meet with the parents as a group before the season starts? And I say this is because, you know, you have a mission for the team. The league has a mission and parents have a mission. And sometimes if you meet with them and find out exactly what's what, then that can eliminate a lot of problems. Because I would imagine there's times when the kids don't play, the parents will be the first ones, or first number of people behind your back saying, you know, why did my kid play?
So we have a mandatory meeting with the parents during our first week of camp. And that is, so we have a league meeting in 2 weeks. And that date will be given at that meeting because we had to have a board member available from Cecil County Junior Football League to be there to witness and confirm the meeting. So we have the meeting, and I have the meeting minutes from the last 7 years, and we meet right there. They go on the field during camp when there's no equipment, no tackling, they're doing the workouts, getting used to, running around bags and stuff like that. And we have the meeting, let them know everything, their expectations, what we were gonna do and their expectations of us. And it's just, some people treat us like we're the cheapest babysitters in the county.
Understand.
And my last question to you, are you in this business for the kids to win? Or are you in this business for the kids to play?
The only thing that I expect the children and students to graduate from my program to do is win life. I could care less about winning football games. I have enough trophies, and I say this all the time, I have enough trophies in my house that my wife gets on me about. I don't need to relive anything through any of these students. I want them to leave our program better, prepared, and understanding for life. And I tell them all when they graduate, my job is to prepare you for life, win the game of life. We're going to challenge you. We're going to put you in adverse situations. We're going to test your character, because a lot of you guys are only going to play this game when they graduate from us for another 4 years. If they're lucky, they may get an opportunity to play a little bit in college. If they're special, they may get a career. But the game of life is going to start at 19. They graduate from us at 14. So in 5 years, that game of life is going to be played a lot longer with what is our lifespan now, 72 years? So basically 52 years, we're playing the game of life when we're only playing the game of football for possibly 13.
And that's a good answer, and I'm done, because I know, having coached at the high school level, what the expectation is to win. You run into that. My philosophy always was teach the kids the game, because I know how to win. But if you teach them how to win, then they'll forget the game, which includes what you're talking about, the afterlife of athletics. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gene, any comments, questions? Good.
No, but I would like to have your number.
It's,
Can you give it to me?
okay, yeah, it's not a problem at all. It's, 443-967-3884.
Any
I just have-
questions, comments? Good,
Good. Thank you.
good.
Thank you.
Pro, thank you for coming.
Thank you for your time.
All right, man.
I
Appreciate you coming in
I
now.
appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's why. Okay. Discussion on the Elkton traffic circulation. Come on down, Will Mathco.
All right, good afternoon.
How are you?
You want me to sit over here or?
Well, however you want to sit. You're in good shape. Pull the whole thing over to you. Now, that thing will slide. That microphone will slide for you. Good. Maybe it won't.
And I am gonna try to share a PowerPoint, but it's saying my participant sharing is disabled.
And I'm working on it now.
Quick hack if you're willing, I can make you the colors.
And you gave us this phone number. I didn't have it either. Yeah, it couldn't have been.
Okay.
Got some exciting stuff here on the East Elkton traffic circulation safety plan.
Now, I'm not gonna be able to go through all of it, but I hope that hit the major points.
Just hit hit the high level points.
So I did share. He was saying he doesn't have. He can share.
If you're willing to make me the co-host, then I'll let you.
Okay, hang on 1 second, please.
I think that, I gave an expert on that. This is,
I think I got it.
Thank you.
I appreciate all of that, and just again, want to thank Mayor and Commissioners for having me here. My name is Bill Switek, Principal Planner with WMAPCO, which is the Wilmington Area Planning Council, and we've been working for the past year on what we're calling the East Elkton Traffic Circulation and Safety Plan. This came to our agency as a request from the town of Elkton, and also a request from Cecil County. So we had two separate requests that came in to look at a planning study. The town of Elkton's was to look at Bell Hill Road. And Cecil County wanted us to look at Delancey Road and also Muddy Lane. So we decided, why look at them separately? Let's join them all together in one big study. So you can see the map here with the study area. You got Bell Hill Road on the top part. We've got Muddy Lane there in the central, and then Delancey towards the south. The border on the north is Elkton Road, and then the south would be US 40. I'll just mention our lead consultant with this was a group called Wallace Montgomery. I think they did a great job. These are the different planned goals that we had. We wanted to understand the existing conditions. We wanted to evaluate different roadway realignments that both the town and the county were thinking about with their comprehensive plans. We wanted to look at land use as well, and some of the conflicts that happen when you have too many trucks and cars that are using the same road. Looking at improvements to road safety along all of the corridors, and then last but not least, looking at walking and cycling improvements throughout the corridor. We had a really robust steering committee that guided this plan's development. Really want to thank Jean with the town. Really instrumental in helping bring this group together and her support with it. We also had reps from Cecil County, great participation from both the middle and high school, police department, state police, Elkton's fire department, Amtrak, Chamber of Commerce, East Coast Greenway, and it just goes on. Last but not least, MDOT and SHA, good participants as well. This was our planning process, just in very simple terms. I mean, we looked at the existing conditions. We looked at a visioning phase where we went out and understood from many residents that told us, how they felt about the corridor, both through a survey and a workshop. We looked at another phase that developed recommendations or concepts based on what we heard from the community. And then we went back out to the community to let us know about those concepts and what they thought about them. And then our last phase here is to select which recommendations should move forward based on that public feedback and also based on technical analysis. So we just wrapped up our third workshop where we shared the results of this plan that I'm going to go over today. And we are still in a phase of public comment through July 29th. So if this is the first time somebody's hearing about the plan, it's not too late to look through it and let us know what you think. It is up on our website that I'll share in a little bit. We do expect our council, council to endorse this at their next meeting in July. So just some highlights for the engagement. I mean, community engagement was like the forefront of this plan. We didn't want to just come in and say, here's the problems, here's how to fix them. We want to hear from the community about what the problems are. And again, get the feedback from the community about what fixes they would prefer. So we had 2 general surveys, we had 3 public workshops. We also had parallel youth engagement. We just talked today about youth a little bit earlier, and that's a group that's often forgotten about in studies. You kind of run something out and forget to ask young people what they think. So we worked with those schools to get that. We also had outreach to our transportation justice communities. So these are low income minority communities that we found in Elkton and wanted to give an extra punch of outreach just to get them more involved. And we had a project webpage that I think is pretty robust where we had all of this material on there. So the outreach overall was very successful. You can see just the spread of participants. We were tracking who we were talking to make sure we weren't missing different neighborhoods in this study area. And as you can see, we had a pretty good spread. The other good thing that I noticed is that we increased the participation. So survey 1 had 121 feedback. Survey 2, we increased that to 188. And same deal between workshop 1 and workshop 2, and then those were both held at the Elkton Library. So still a little sense of the community's feel. Are you very concerned about traffic safety? And you can see Delancey Road is the number 1 concern of the 3 roads in the corridor. 65% saying yes. Muddy Lane over half, so 55%. And then Bell Hill Road still a concern for a third of residents. Overall, in our second survey, we said, hey, did the plan address the concerns that you had about traffic conditions and safety? And you can see there, we had 78% of people who took the second survey saying that it did address their concerns. So I think that's a pretty good number that shows that the plan was successful. For those of you that did not say that that was success, some of the key reasons why not were the plan didn't do enough at US 40 and Delancey Road, which is a tough intersection. There wasn't much in the second survey about recommendations there. We did add a few that are in this report that I hope covers those concerns that people had, that it was missing. The other thing that we heard was speed enforcement needed to be a bigger factor in here, and that the police could do more to enforce the speeding on these roads. And then there was just some skepticism about the effectiveness that the concepts would have. But again, overall, I would say the community was very happy with the results. Some of the youth surveys, this is just things that we heard from students. One of the key things was walking and biking as more opportunities for that to get around. To read some of the quotes from the students here: would love to skate from school at home without being scared of cars. We want to have more sidewalks and bike lanes connecting big parts of the neighborhoods to main parts of Elkton, and then adding a path from Delancey Village to the neighborhood behind that. And we followed that up with a second survey to look at some more detail. We held this at the high school during lunch hour. It was super successful. We talked about 60 kids, got some more opinions about Delancey Road as a focus point. And then we had the kids draw different potential walking paths that could be built in the future, that could be studied further and potentially looked at in terms of connecting neighborhoods. In terms of the main recommendations for the study, there are dozens. So again, I'm not going to be able to go through all of them tonight. But what we did do is divide them between short-term, medium-term, and long-term. Short-term would be the easy fix ones that would be within 2 years or so. So just to give you a couple highlights of that, S1, S2, S3 are all at the intersection of 279 and Bell Hill Road that we noticed just was basically out of code in a couple of areas. Pavement markings are thinned out, vegetation is overgrown, the signal wasn't timed correctly. Signal's been retimed by the state, and they put work orders in for the other two. So that's already moving. Another key thing is administrative, looking at the roadway classification. So roadways are classified based on their use, and these 3 corridors are classified in a way that's not reflective of the traffic that's out there. So both Muddy Lane and Bell Hill Road are classified as local. They should be collectors. And then Delancey is classified as a collector. It should be a minor arterial. That's just the level of traffic that they are at right now. Some of the other stuff we talked a little bit about, those pathways. So that's a study that could be done in the near term. I don't want to get in trouble with my boss, but I think that's something that WAPCO could fund. You could take a look at those trail connections. This is another example of a quick fix that we already submitted. This is looking at some additional signage at the underpass on Muddy Lane, where we've heard from residents that trucks are getting stuck. We looked at some data. We saw there was about 7 or 10 trucks a day trying to go through here. So we added some, or made a suggestion to add some more signage to this area to warn trucks about the low underpass. And I do know at least one of these has been done by the county. Some midterm recommendations, a few of these have to do with this zoning and the opportunity that the town and the county have with the comprehensive land use plan coming up to take a look at long-term designations. So as we mentioned, in the north of the corridor, we have, manufacturing or warehousing with residential uses that could be looked at in terms of buffering, better buffering between those uses. On Muddy Lane, we have biodiverse area that's currently zoned for residential. So that's something to potentially consider as well. Things that we noticed just as we were going through and doing a plan here.
One of the main ones here is the intersection of the Lansing Road and Royal Farms, which is another hotspot we heard from community members. This was the most dangerous section of the corridor when we look at crash data. And the recommendation that came out of here, key one, is to restrict left turns coming out of the Royal Farms. That is something that most residents wanted to see. And one of the opportunities we have is to potentially construct a new road that would connect through this park space to the back of Royal Farms, just giving folks a different way to access Royal Farms and to get out of in and out a little more safely. We also recommended when that's done to potentially upgrade that park that land sits on, because right now it's sort of underutilized, just not a lot going on out there. There's a slide, but not much else. In terms of preference, we had 63% in the second survey prefer that, and the kids love this idea. 97% thought that was great. They gave us some ideas for the park upgrades that could happen. In terms of the long-term recommendations, I mean, these are the big ones. These are the ones that are 5+ years. I would say in many cases, 10+ years to do. But some of these include just realignments of the roadways, intersection rebuilds, looking at adding a shared use path, which is a path for both walkers and cyclists on all 3 corridors. That was a key recommendation. Looking at muddy lanes, underpass, and so forth. And that muddy lane underpass is probably the biggest of the recommendations, certainly the most expensive fix that we proposed in this study by far. It may end up being the most expensive fix with all the other recommendations combined. So we had 2 ideas that ran out publicly. One was to go over the bridge or the railroad tracks, and one was to go under. Both of these concepts were looked at by the county a few years ago. And we basically took these concepts, put renderings to them, brought them out to the public, and just got some feedback on it. The community preference was the lower one. So the underpass was the most popular one. But both of these concepts may have significant impacts, socially as well as environmentally. So at this time, we can't say which one is the preferred alternative. So the recommendation from the study is just to continue studying both of them, advance both, and then see what the impacts would be.
Sir,
Yes.
you are aware that that underpass floods bad as is. If you were to make it lower, it would be worse.
Absolutely. So that's exactly one of the reasons why we think it has to continue to be studied and understand what diversions or potential things could happen to enable that to go in. But flooding was something the consultant looked at, but they just didn't have enough resources to look at it that deeply, unfortunately.
Years ago, I will say under it, they did put pipes to help drain the water out. And it worked for a long, long time, but if you dig that too deep, it's gonna flood again, really.
Very, very. Unless some changes are made to the surrounding land.
Exactly.
Guys, are you guys making that 14 foot so we would have clearance for 18 yards?
That's a good question. I'm not sure why the consultant made it 14 feet. I'm not sure if that's just the standard or what the case would be, but this was, again, just sort of a concept that has been studied. And what we wanted to do is visualize it and let the community take a look at it, react to it. But it's something that we need to continue studying. It's not something that is definitive. So either of these, as shown, could be adjusted and will be adjusted based on further analysis. Another big one was Bell Hill Road. So you can see here, this is actually a picture from big maps showing a problem that everybody knows about, and that's the stacking issue, trucks trying to get onto 279. So the preferred alternative here was to stretch out these bays as trucks are trying to come out, just to give them more space and a little more delineation in terms of where to go, so they can have better access to Elkton Road. A couple other key recommendations here moving to the south. L7 looks at realignment of, or actually that one's looking at shared use path along Red Hill Road between Muddy Lane and Delancey. We also looked at the intersection of Delancey and Red Hill Road, and Delancey Road itself. So just the key one here is on Kemp Lane, which is it's a private lane right now that connects Red Hill Road with 781, which is Delancey. And so we had two concepts that were out publicly. One was making that an actual public road, which is shown here. So it would connect Wheel House Drive to the roundabout on Red Hill Road. That was the preferred alternative from the community, but we had a second one that would look at just making a pathway connection. So a bike path that would connect the shared use path that would be put on Delancey with one that would go on Muddy Lane. Again, this was similar to the underpass where we said we can't make a definitive recommendation. This is a historic area, as I'm sure everyone knows. And you know, it may be that this would be too big of a lift to put a road in through here. But again, just to mention that this is the public preferred alternative. We'll mention just one more. This image here just shows you that Delancey Road shared use path concept. So basically what that would do is add that center turn lane on here, and then you have room for a 10-foot shared use path in different parts of this corridor to add. One of the key things we heard, you know, throughout this process was not only the need for a walking and biking path, but the fact that people were already using this road for walking and biking, and this is a way to just make that happen in a more safe manner. So again, this is our planning process. We're at the end of it. Council is looking for endorsement of that at their next meeting. I think I mentioned in July. That's actually going to be in September. So we are out for public comment through July 29th. This is the website, so it's wamapco.org, and then it's /east-Elkton. And if you go on there, you can get a copy of this plan. We just today put up a presentation from our consultant that goes into some of this in a little more detail. And we are again accepting comments. You can go ahead and email the address there that you might have. I appreciate your time, and thanks again for having me.
Well, listen, thank you so much for the presentation, and we're looking forward to the remainder of the comments, and the Wilmapco Council will give us a recommendation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good, report.
Jeannie, did you have anything? No, I thought they did a wonderful job. Yeah. And there's a lot of potential projects here. Future studies and possibly future projects, construction projects.
There we go. Thank you.
Appreciate
it. Okay, next up, we have a discussion of the Big Elk Creek drainage assessment.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. Thank you so much for allowing us to be here today. My name is James Taylor from Redantis. I just want to take the opportunity to thank you guys for allowing us to work on this project for you. I have a team with us today to talk about this Big Elk Creek flood study that's in progress. We're right now, as you'll hear, have finished the analysis part. And over the next couple of months, we'll be working on recommendations and design some concept plans. But wanted to kind of clue you guys in on where we're at right now, go through the presentation. And I'm going to turn it over to my team, Gina Tan and Erica Plazinski, to talk more about the project.
Thanks, James. Yeah, thanks for having us here today to talk about the study. So we're going to give you a bit of background on the study, kind of talk a little bit about our progress so far. So I'm sure, as you all are aware, there's flooding that occurs along Big Elk Creek in the town of Elkton. For the most part, from what we've seen, it's primarily flooding of parks, roads, properties that occurs from fairly frequent storms, not just large, 100-year or 1% annual chance floods. It's frequent flooding and there's a lot of sediment and debris deposition. There is a FEMA flood boundary mapped for this area. That shows the 100-year or the 1% annual chance flood. As you may also be aware, there have been a lot of previous studies related to flooding along Big Elk Creek. There was an Army Corps study, the FEMA flood insurance study, which led to the FEMA mapping that I just mentioned. It's been a study of historic structures that have flooded, a study by Fish and Wildlife about fish passage at the Elkton Dam. And then the DOT did a sediment study basically about the sources of sediments in the watershed that end up in the town. So with all these previous studies, our purpose is to move forward and to come up with some solutions. So the study that we're working on has been funded by the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, by a grant from them. And there's a few purposes and outcomes that we're working on here. So we want to assess the flood risk in town and also the sediment and siltation, kind of understand, get a better picture of what's going on. And then identify and prioritize strategies for flood mitigation. So things that are feasible, things that are permittable, and then also hopefully projects that are fundable, that may be eligible for grant funding, to help move those forward. So as part of the project, we'll be producing some conceptual designs and a report. And again, we're hoping to try to tailor them with the information that would be needed to support future funding of those measures. So the steps for the study, just to give you an overview of what we've been contracted to do here, is to, number one, conduct the drainage and flood assessment. So we're reviewing data and records, things like existing models, photos of flooding. We did a field assessment where we kind of just took a look at current conditions, what it looks like out there. We've done hydrologic and hydraulic modeling, and we used FEMA's model as a starting point and then made some adjustments to reflect current conditions. And then public meeting, which that's what's happening here today, to kind of review the study and the current status. And then we'll be moving into the next step, which is prioritizing flood impact areas and identifying potential solutions. So what this entails is overlaying some flood mapping with community assets and properties, infrastructure, things like that, to get an idea of what's flooding. And a risk assessment to kind of understand the risk to these different elements. And then a prioritization of impact areas. So, prioritizing which pieces of the flooding problem are the, highest priority to address. And then identifying a range of potential solutions. And then the final step to the current project is to produce conceptual designs for up to 3 of these flood impact areas. And so for each of these, there would be a conceptual design, a cost estimate, and then there'll be a kind of a narrative describing it. And this will be completed by the end of September. So where we're at right now, I kind of talked through the steps where you're at that public meeting stage, kind of at the end of our first task. So we do have some preliminary findings at this point. First, about the flooding. So we took a look at FEMA's modeling, which is used to map their 100-year floodplain for the area. And we generally found that, it's fairly current. It's pretty good mapping. Our modeling was pretty well in agreement with it. We did find that there's sediment deposition, there's debris blocking primarily at some of the bridges and the bends in the stream. And those are exacerbating, kind of some of the flood extents, making the flooding spread to a wider area, particularly just upstream of Main Street. But then also in smaller storms, the ones that might happen once a year, once every other year, once every 10 years. There's also significant flooding, so it's not just in the really extreme flood events, it's also in kind of more frequent precipitation events that you're getting some flooding. The flooding of actual structures appears to be somewhat limited, but there's a lot of flooding of roadways and parks and, you know, kind of all the assets that are in the parks. As far as roads go, we've sort of got some listed here that are sort of the ones that are flooding the most, Howard and Bow Streets, Bridge Street, Delaware Avenue, the parks, several of the parks are, you know, are getting flooded.
If I may interject, I'd have to disagree with the flooding of structures being limited,
Okay.
because I have a business on Howard Street, backs up to it, and I've been there for 38 years and seen a lot of floods. And we get flooded every time.
Okay.
It comes into our basements and garages, all the businesses back along there. We can't use our basements or our garages, so it does get into the structures almost every time.
Okay, yeah, and we were, oh, that's good to know. And part of the effort, which we'll get to today, is getting more information about what's flooding. We have been aware of the kind of the basement flooding. I guess what I was trying to get at here a little bit is, when you're thinking about kind of, I guess, flood insurance claims and, you know, high levels of damage, we haven't seen a lot of like first floor flooding, but I'm sure that basement flooding in businesses is also causing damage, and we're hoping to get some info about.
Yeah, lost
you know,
furnaces and water heaters.
Okay,
So I
okay.
had no choice but to put them anywhere. So anyway, I mean.
Yeah.
Just to let you know, we get flooded pretty hard.
But it's come up to commercial floods. So, Bridge.
We'll say Albacore Creek, it does flood out there. My father one time, he was starting to leave, they had to bring a boat in, to take him out by boat. Because he was in the other, he was in the mountains. And where was that located? Albacore Creek.
Well, and as we move forward, we'll see, we actually have some forms here to try to collect additional information from everybody, because it's helpful to hear more about priorities and specific locations, and especially the more specific information you have, right? Like frequently, you know, a basement or particular asset floods. It's really helpful in developing, you know, solutions that are like targeted to the worst of the problems. So appreciate the input.
Well, can I ask you, doesn't?
Ma'am, hey, ma'am, I'll let you ask a question. They're making a presentation to the board today, and when I'll ask her some questions, so I know you got some questions. Thank you. Go ahead and finish.
Okay, sure, thanks. Okay, so beyond the flooding, you know, another kind of key issue here is the sediment and the debris that's accumulating. So, you know, from you can see on our photos here, and from, you know, the information we have, and from visiting, you know, and taking a look, there's excessive sediment deposits at stream beds and bridges. And the debris is forming blockages at the upstream base of the bridge. So really restricting the flow through some of these bridges because there's so much debris and sediment. So, you know, this reduces conveyance through the bridge. And what happens then is you're slowing the velocity of the flood water through the bridge. So higher velocity water is going to keep the sediment and the debris moving. As you accumulate some debris, slows the water down, and then it kind of makes the cycle worse, right? The water keeps getting slower, and you keep getting more debris and sediment accumulating there. It doesn't have quite as much of an impact on the really large storms, but the smaller storms, the frequent storms, the ones you might have once every year, every couple years, are really being exacerbated by all this sediment and debris. So the water's coming a lot further out of the creek than it might if the channel was clear. From the sedimentation study that had been done previously, we find that about 85% of the sediment that's coming down the creek comes from land. So this is like runoff from upstream agricultural land and things like that. And about 15% comes from stream bank erosion, some of which is in the town and then, some further upstream. So, a lot of the sediment that's coming into the town, that's coming down the creek is from upstream of the town. So this is gonna be really hard to look at here on the screen, but we do have some boards you can look at afterwards too. This is just to give you one little snapshot of some of the modeling and mapping we're doing. So this is kind of one section of the creek. And just to tell you what the lines are on here, the light blue kind of line, that's FEMA's 100-year floodplain. There's a green line, that's the same 100-year floodplain from our model with some adjustments to match current conditions. So they're pretty comparable. There's a couple spots where there's some discrepancies, but the red would be the 10-year storm. And then that dark blue color would be we put 1,500 cubic feet per second. That's a flood you might expect to happen around once a year, maybe once every other year. So I think what's really interesting to see here is, you might expect to have water in the basements of those buildings in a 100-year storm, but you can see even in the 10-year storm, almost even in that annual storm, we're finding that the floodwaters would be coming well out of the banks of the creek and also creating flooding issues. So that really, the modeling really confirms kind of the frequent nature of the flooding.
I can confirm it firsthand for you. Happens a lot more than you think.
Yeah, from the information we have, I mean, we have pictures just from several floods just in the last, year or two. I mean, so we know that it's definitely very frequent. It's not a primary focus of our study, but we just wanted to mention, climate change and sea level rise, which will have some impact on the town. So, with climate change, you're going to expect precipitation, make it more intense. The storms may kind of change in nature to really like heavy, intense precipitation over a shorter period of time, and maybe more frequent too. So, that could make the flooding even more frequent. And then as far as sea level rise goes, so the Big Elk Creek is a tidal stream. So already, high tide does push up into, up along the creek. The estimates are, there's a lot of estimates, but a rough estimate is 3 feet of sea level rise expected in this area by 2100. And that'll impact, it'll impact Big Elk Creek because, the higher tides may move further up and out of the banks of the channel, but also when you have a storm, then if you also have a high tide at the downstream end, that also tends to back the water up. So this map here just shows you roughly if there were 3 feet of sea level rise, here's where the high tide would be. So in some cases, even without a storm, if you had 3 feet of sea level rise, you would expect some water out of the banks during high tide. All right, so the next steps for our study are to prioritize the flood impact areas and identify potential solutions. So, and I'll add, as part of this meeting today, we're hoping to collect information from whoever would like to provide it about whatever flooding you're seeing at your property, whatever information you can share. So we have some forms that can be filled out afterwards, and then there's also an online version of the form. So we're happy to collect any information from everybody here. And so the next steps are to assess the risks to infrastructure, assets, and properties based on the modeling and the input that we'll get. Identify a range of solutions and assess those based on the priorities that we're hearing about from folks here or people that are completing the online form. And then the plan is to form a working group to solicit feedback on potential solutions. So we're hoping today that anybody that would be interested in being part of this working group to provide some input on any potential solutions we come up with, we'd love to have your name today so that we can kind of add you to the list for that. And then the next step after that would be to provide conceptual design. So once we've kind of narrowed down what the solutions may be, we'll do a conceptual design for up to 3 of these areas. Again, with a sketch, a cost estimate, and a narrative description. And then there'll be a report that kind of packages it all up. All right, so as I mentioned already several times, we do want your input. So for our folks that are participating, on the Zoom, there's a QR code, there's a link you can use to get to a form. This has also been advertised in the Cecil Wig. The link is there, so folks can find it there or on the Elkton website. We're hoping to get input, I think, remember Erica, what did we say? By the end of Yeah, so we're hoping to get the input fairly soon so we can keep this study moving and incorporate it as quickly as possible.
Very good. Ma'am, you had a question back there. Could you state your name and address and tell us what you got?
I'm Lydia Kipka, I live on Muddy Lane. And the thing is, one thing I want to say, doesn't some of this water come from Pennsylvania down? I mean, because I have been up there a whole lot of different times and it's surprising when there's no rain. The ditches are so tall and there's nothing in them. And also down there at the dam, then there, if you've ever been back there, way back up there on top of things, if you go back in the beach, you will see where there was enough dam at one time. I mean, I lived in that area, so I've seen a lot of flooding down there, a whole lot. And on Muddy Lane, I get a lot of flooding to the Gulf Creek too. Times when it comes 2.5 block high in my basement.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments out in the audience? Board members, any questions, comments?
Not at this time.
No, I'd say let's keep it going.
Yeah, we'll be back in September, or is it September or October? We'll be back to present to the results.
Whenever you're.
I think it's towards the end of September, we'll be back to talk through kind of what the study showed and wrap it up.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Does your study then take it up further, up the creek and for mitigation of some sort?
You're saying into Pennsylvania?
Well, they're not that far. It does. Our modeling extends the whole length of the model, which starts in Pennsylvania. That comes down, we're just focusing on changes within the town.
Yeah.
Within the town, but I mean, like, would there be any areas where the water could be dispersed? That is something we're looking into. We're looking at town-owned parcels and whether any of those can be purchased for storage of either floodwater or sediment or both. When you look at all that sediment that's around, then especially down we're having, we're talking about that now. It seems like it's a
Jane, can you squeeze up talking to that?
Part of that, it seems like it takes about a year. So they're saying to get a permit to dredge that out there. What kind of impact would that have?
Yeah, well, I mean, for sure, cleaning out the sediment and debris would have an impact. And then we're certainly looking at that and as part of what we can look into, the permitting process and what would be needed there. But then, beyond that too, thinking about, you clean out the debris, it's gonna come back eventually, right? One clean out's not gonna do it. So we're also, in addition, looking at some other measures that could be done that, may reduce the accumulation of sediment and debris. It is a challenge, as you mentioned, with, Elkton is at the downstream end of this large watershed that goes up into Pennsylvania. So, addressing sort of watershed scale, issues would require more of like a regional study with different participants, but at least with this study, we're trying to identify some things that can be done within town limits to make some improvements.
Thank you.
The board has to be aware that the Big Elk watershed is about 52 square miles. Half of that's in Chester County.
Yeah.
So there's a tremendous amount of water that comes down on major events from the state of Pennsylvania, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, that we don't have any control over.
Right.
A lot of water.
Are you ladies, familiar with Underwood Associates? They're a flood control company. It's ironic that they spoke about everyone wants to hurry the water along, get it through faster. And they spoke about creating channels off into public areas, not residential, of course, but like wooded areas to slow the water down and let it seep into the ground. So it's funny that you mentioned, let's clear it out and get it through in a hurry.
It's a combination of things. We are familiar with Underwood. We know the town's been working with Underwood for a little bit, on some things and some potential projects in the future. With removing the debris, it allows for more capacity, right? So that what that's helping for is the smaller storms. For the smaller storms where you're seeing those impacts on basements flooding on the regular, that's what that's gonna help with. The larger storms, we need other types of measures in order to make
It
it work.
seems
But
like
it's
a
gonna-
hybrid.
it's gonna be a combination, it will most likely be a combination of the two to figure out, okay, short term, how do we help the smaller storms from not causing major damage? And then how do we address the larger storms?
Do you think the S-shaped curvature in the creek is a big issue? You haven't not got to that point yet. Where the ball fields are.
Yeah, I mean, from an ecological perspective, it's great to have, windy streams. That's how streams naturally form. I mean, I don't think per se that the F shape is like causing the flooding or exacerbating the flooding. I think it's just sort of a part of the, a part of, how the stream formed in the town. And you do tend to see sediment kind of accumulate when you have bends in the stream. You'll get some sediment accumulation there, but
Yeah, and I've reviewed several years going back of like aerial imagery of that area where there's that extreme Esker. And it doesn't seem like it's migrating much, like it's not getting bendier with time. It's pretty consistent going back to the 50s.
Yes, it is, because I've kayaked that creek for years, and that particular bend, it makes a hard right as it goes downstream. And it really hasn't changed in many years.
Interesting. Thank you.
I will say one thing too, the water plant used the flood, take it from work in the water plant. And he had to actually go down in the basement and actually swim through it to disconnect some of the water to get out.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Okay, that concludes our workshop unless anyone has any comments.
He came to me asking this fellow over here some questions. about
Yes, you can talk to him as much as you'd like. Meeting adjourned.